Welcome to the Empowered Money Girl, where we break down the barriers to financial confidence, celebrate women's wins, and reveal the secrets to living boldly and well. I'm your host, Josette Mandela. Shelly Tisius is the founder of MT&A Associates, a seven-figure sign language interpreting and accessibility firm. She's a change maker who refuses to accept the status quo, leading and serving with intentional listening instead of cookie-cutter solutions. Raised in poverty, Shelly turned hardship into fuel for building a different future, a future defined by resilience, courage, and persistence. Today, she blends decades of interpreting expertise with user experience and powerful mindset work to ensure access and connection work for everyone. She proves that when you embrace the ups and downs, you can create both success and significance. If you're ready to discover what it means to lead with courage, passion, and conviction, and to turn life's challenges into your greatest advantage, you'll love this conversation. Please welcome the trailblazing Shelly Tisius. So,
Thanks for that.
oh, so can you take us back to the beginning? What was your path like to where you are today?
Well, it's a pretty deep or as complicated question, I should say. But as you mentioned in my bio, I did grow up in poverty. We did grow up on food stamps. We got our food from food pantries, and so I grew up in a very cost cautious environment. You know, what we spent was very carefully spent. Everything was very carefully, selected, and a lot of things were donated to us, and so as a child, I always decided that where I was very happy, we had everything that we possibly needed. I was knew as an adult I wanted to do something different. So I used a lot of that mindset as a child of like when I get older, I'm going to be, going to college, I will be pursuing a job, a very, professional position that paid well, right? My mom was in a position where she did have to stay home and take care of us. She was a single mom, so she didn't really have the luxury to leave the home because she didn't really have the support system at the home to care for us while she was out working. So through all of that, I decided that I was going to go to college, and and I did do that. I was the first one in my family to pursue a college degree. While I was in college, I ran into some people from the deaf community who were teaching me some sign language, and I really fell in love with the language at that time. Meanwhile, I was a manager at a McDonald's store, so I was getting some management experience and leadership experience and training. I was also waitressing to help pay the bills. So two jobs, going to school full time. I have no idea just how I had time to do all of those things, but there was a life where I had time to do all of those things. And that led me to into the deaf community. And that's where I started pursuing my degree in sign language interpreting and fell in love with the community for sure. Still just really love the community. And as I started working as an interpreter, I was really passionate about, I would say, improving or just allowing for a different experience for interpreting versus it being a traditional, I call it more of a referral model where interpreters go to different locations and it's more of a referral. I wanted to provide a higher level service to clients. And so about 13 years ago is when I opened our business. And yeah, that's kind of where it all started and where it's going.
That is such an interesting journey, and to think it all started because you decided I want a different life. And
Mhm.
then when you got to college, you got to meet people that were, let's say, different than you were, and you wanted to be able to interact with them, and you took that extra step to learn sign language so that you could actually talk to the deaf. And then you decided, hey, I like this enough. I think I should turn it into my career.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, at what point did you decide that I really think I want to do this on my own rather than work for somebody else? Was there like a turning point where corporate wasn't the thing for you?
So great question. I would say going back to childhood too, as a child, I was very, very independent. I was also and still am what I would call a go-getter. I uh, am constantly busy, maybe even sometimes to my own detriment, I should say. Um, But I decided early on that I really wanted to be a business owner. And actually, when I was working at McDonald's, I also have a twin sister and we lived together. And so we started pursuing a house cleaning business on the side. And so we were doing that for a while before we started college. So before I was old enough to go to college. So coming out of high school, we had that business. And so already started having like a little connection and sort of passion for business. I didn't think it was going to be house cleaning. I love cleaning houses, oddly enough. But I did determine at that time, like, well, I don't know that I want to do this forever, right? All of these
Mhm.
houses forever, but I love the idea of a business. So, corporate was fine, right? McDonald's was a great experience. I worked, actually, that's primarily where I worked. And then I worked as an operations director at a salon and day spa. And as I worked myself up in the company, I recognized like between McDonald's and the small business, I really like the small business and primarily because our impact is so I feel like so much greater and you can impact change so much faster versus in corporate at McDonald's I could have a great idea it wouldn't go anywhere right it would
Mm.
take too long and because I'm such that like I said I'm a mover I'm a goer and so that wasn't fast enough for for me so it just made sense that when I started working in the community as an interpreter and I was feeling like we could do so many more things I also was struggling with getting impact of change. So that's when it made just perfect sense. My husband, you should open your own company. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do that. But that's exactly what I did. And so that's kind of where it came from.
That's that really is a truly interesting track to go from McDonald's where, like you say, it's a large corporation. So they have a very defined track of you start out here, you do this next thing, then you move to this next thing, and over time you get to a certain place in both the corporation and your career and you kind of know from almost day one that here's what my life is going to look like the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
But then when you step out of that and decide, no, I think I want something different because like you say, I want to make an impact. Whereas when you're working for someone else, especially a large corporation, you put suggestions in the box and they kind of, it feels like they go there to die.
They stayed in box. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what kind of relationship do you have with money today, given where you started and
So that's a really great question, and I'm so glad that I'm talking to you today and not a couple of years ago because I would say that the upbringing of money and not having enough of it and are we going to have enough money to pay the bills? Are we going to have enough money for food? The whole mindset. I thought over my over the years of having a professional job and being a successful person that I had sort of gotten over that. And then during the pandemic, it kind of started kind of floating back up again. So I started doing some mindset work and some meditations with Sarah Blondin and some other people on oh gosh, Insight Timer and started working with a coach, my business coach. And what I recognized is that I had a lot of underlying feelings and emotions and things attached to money. And I had to actually do a practice of writing a letter to money. Like money, I appreciate you, all those things. I also had to be comfortable with the fact that I wanted more of it. I wanted more money. And I was before where I was like, oh, that sounds really greedy to say that. Now I'm really comfortable telling everybody in the world, I want to make more money. The people on my staff want to make more money. Like there's so much more positive connection to money. So I would say, coming through that practice, I realized that I would get up at night worrying, like, oh my gosh, what if the pipes in our house burst and we have to pay for it? Well, we had money in the bank account to pay for it. I mean, it would deplete it. But there was just always this constant worry about how much I was spending. I had to start using Instacart during the pandemic. I had a baby born with some health conditions, and so I couldn't go to the store. So I thought, well, I
Mhm.
should get rid of Instacart, but it's $9.99 a month. Like,
Right?
why am I? So I started realizing that some of the stress that I was putting on myself and pressure was related to these feelings about money and these emotions. And so I had to work through some fears and a lot of anxiety about that. And so today I would say much different. I'm comfortable going and saying, let's all have dinner and I'll buy. And I'm comfortable that happening and not worrying that the aftermath is that is going to be like worrisome. I'm going to feel proud. Like I just paid for dinner. Like that was really great. Yeah.
And that yeah, I would call that an enlightened view of money because I'm of the, same way. I'm of the opinion that if you're grateful for the money that you have, that more money will come to you because the universe says, oh, she's a good steward of money. She understands what to do with money versus someone that's, like you say, waking up in the middle of the night, always stressed, wondering, where's that next dollar coming from? Oh, if I spend it on this, maybe that's going to, like you said, the pipes break or,
Yeah.
some other weird emergency pops up.
Yeah. With you
And
saying that too, I think that I feel people are more comfortable talking about it now, but I would say sometimes people consider me a little woo in this respect, and it's because my business coach is very woo. But she really encouraged me. Coming from the pandemic, our sales were just going up. We were just doing really well, and then we sort of leveled off during the pandemic. We dropped a little bit, and I had to start setting intentions. And my intention was, I want to be. So in 2023, I said, I want to be a seven-figure business. I want to make $1 million in 2024. I set the intention in 2023, totally forgot about it completely. Fast forward to the end of 2024, around November, I started looking at my numbers and I was like, what? Like we were approaching that $1 million, and I was so shocked that the second or the moments, right, took about a year, me just letting go, setting different intentions, we just immediately went up. And this year we've already hit that seven figure. And so I didn't realize how much mindset and how, like you said, once you allow the money to flow to you, that it comes to you. And I would say money in general, because this is the conversation, but I would say anything, right? The second we let go, we get love in our life, or whatever we're holding on to. The second that we just let go, it seems to give us what we want, which is so ironic. but but yeah, anyway, I just want to point that out or mention that.
yeah, and I agree. Is the things that you hold on tightly are the things that seem to keep slipping through your fingers. Whereas if you just relax and let it go and come to you in the form it's supposed to come to you, and that seems to be the other thing is that if you insist on it looking a certain way, it doesn't happen either because the universe is like, yeah, no, that's not the right way for you. Let go, and I will show you how it's supposed to look.
Yes, I like how you said that. I really like how you said that. Yeah.
So, do you actively invest?
So great question. Currently my husband's our primary investor for our family. I do have a retirement plan. Investing is an area that I'd like to learn more about, especially as our business grows. And so I do just very also because of that frugal that upbringing, I'm really worried about parting with money for too long. I still have like a little bit of attachment to it. So I think about a couple weeks ago, I went to the bank for something and he's like, you really should put this money into this like short term kind of thing. And I was like, well, how much are you going to take out? He's like, well, you can really do this much. So we have a little bit of money invested in like a CD or something like that, like a really safe CD at the bank. But that's still an area that, we didn't have money to invest as a child. We didn't have any of those things. So it's still an area that I really heavily rely on my advisor and my husband really to manage at this point. So that's the current things that I'm doing, but I'd love to get more into it once I understand it more.
And that's a great point. I mean, I definitely do not recommend just jumping in 2 feet and deciding, oh, look, cryptocurrency is in the news. I think I'll just jump in and try that because obviously until you are comfortable with the concepts, things could go wrong. And you need to be comfortable when you're doing your investing with why am I doing this and am I okay if this investment doesn't work out and I lose it all? And that's kind of that balancing act of I want to grow my money faster than, like you say, it's growing in a CD or something really safe. On the other hand, it's what happens if the worst happens. When we invest, if we do it right, our goal is to grow the money. But like you say, a COVID-19 pandemic could show up or some other thing that suddenly changes the whole trajectory of whatever you're in. So, um, but you're learning, you recognize that you don't have the skill set yet, that you're
Mhm.
taking your time one step at a time, learning new things. And that's definitely the way to go is not be fearful, try things, learn about things, and then move to the next thing that's going to grow your money that much faster. And I definitely commend you on putting money into the retirement plan because there's far too many people that don't even do that much for themselves. And then they get to the end of their life and they're like, what happened?
And I didn't do it for a while. I didn't do it for a while because I also had like, just the new bit. And then, yeah, once things sort of stabilized, I was like, I really should be doing this. So I listened to my financial advisors. Yeah. Yeah.
And in the begin, well, actually, at any point, having a financial advisor is a good thing because they can be a sounding board for you and they can help you with the education and say, yeah, no, you're not at a point where cryptocurrency makes sense, for
Right.
example. That's a really risky investment. But let's talk about CDs or US savings bonds or, a number of things that are really safe. Buying your own home, for example, that's an investment. It could turn out well, or, you could find yourself in a toxic waste dump like Love Canal back in New York.
Yeah.
But if everything goes well, that home could be a substantial part of your investment portfolio. So
Yeah. And I didn't think of that. We do own our own home and we did buy we were very lucky, I should say, to buy at the low of the market, 14 years ago.
nice.
And so we so we have a really we really really did really well on our home. So there's a couple areas where, some of that frugality has really paid off in a lot of ways. So it's for me still a balance of like when should I be being frugal and when should I be spending and sort of like still that balance because I know there's still that underlying fear there sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for women who want to start building financial independence, but in the currently they're like relying on someone else to do it?
Yeah, it's such a tricky thing because everyone is so independent. I'm in a very good place where I feel that I have, having my husband manage it makes the most sense for our family. As far as like advice, I think going back to what I said earlier is really critical, is being okay and being comfortable, especially as women, because I think sometimes we have a little bit more fear just because we're supposed to be a certain way sometimes or act a certain way. Being okay that you want to make more money or that you want to have certain things and maybe not telling the universe exactly what you want, but maybe a little bit like I want that specific car or I want that specific purse or something like that. I think just being comfortable with what you really, really want in life because we can go through our whole life being what people want us to be. And I think something that was really great over the last couple of years as I've been doing some more of this mindset work is that I was able to let some of that go and say, I don't know, I wouldn't mind having. I honestly love my Honda Pilot. That's where I've got two little kids, so that's where I don't want a fancy car. I really don't want those things. But what I really want is a kind of an Italian vacation. I want to spend money there. And so I
Mm.
think being comfortable with saying what you want and then actively, focusing on that. I didn't get married until I met my husband when I was 27, married at 32, first kid at 37. So he's also in the Air Force. So I get a lot of time to myself. So as a young adult, what I think really helped me to be independent is being comfortable being by myself and being comfortable making my decisions, being comfortable in my mindset. And I think that's what's really helped me. So I would say, as far as financially, the same thing. There also, we're so lucky now. There are so many classes, there's podcasts, there's so many great ways for us to get information. So I think you already said it too, first being comfortable knowing what you want, being confident in those things, and then actively seeking out the people who can help support, educate you so that you can make the decisions that you want. And I feel like we're just a lot more frugal. Even my husband is more frugal in some of our investments. Like we have some money in a high interest savings account versus all of it in here, right? So
Hmm.
I also feel comfortable, I don't have money in my mattress, but having money under the mattress and behind the fridge. I think it's really I think it's comforting to me to know that we have money in our retirement. We have money in this CD and this high interest, having money in separate places. So if
Hmm.
one doesn't work out so well, or there's a pandemic or something hits the market, not everything is impacted at once. So I think that's probably a lot of information, but I think that's probably the advice I would provide.
Yeah, and I love that you brought out diversification because that absolutely is the key to, like you say, being able to survive a pandemic and still be able to pay your bills and buy the groceries and all those things is because the maybe the stock market's not doing so well because the pandemic is causing businesses to shut down and all these different things. But on the other hand, that money in that CD or savings account, that's going to be there doing just fine because that doesn't have a tie-in to all of that. Um, the same thing with your house. To me, owning your own home is really safety and security because now I know that I have a place to live. So
True.
I'm not scrambling trying to figure out, uh-oh, the landlord's decided that they don't want to rent anymore, or they're going to sell the building and the new owner is going to jack up the rent, a couple $100, whatever the story might be. So, or they're going to turn it into a condo and,
This happened to me.
oh,
This happened to
oh,
me. Or they had to buy me out of my lease because they said, "Hey, I sold the building and we're building they're building condos and so you can't be here when they demolish the building."
oh
Yeah.
no.
So yeah, so that happened to me. So that's real story. That's real stuff. That really happens.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, do you believe that women should have money of their own, and why or why not?
Um, so So it's a good question, and I think it's more on the it's definitely a personal decision, and I am so open about this that I have some married friends who have separate bank accounts, and for a while my husband and I had separate bank accounts. Over time, we just started putting it together because it just made it easier. But his parents grew up, and his mom had her own bank account, and she can spend any money out of there. And so, again, I feel like I'm just in a really blessed position. I also, dated, not a lot, but, I dated till I felt like, I was the last one probably to get married, and all of my friends at 32 years old. I waited to, really find someone who had similar values that I did. So as far as like separating money, again, I think it's such a personal decision. And again, I'm really lucky where we both keep each other in check. Like, while we're spending a lot of money here, we're spending a lot of money there. And we just openly communicate about it. I'm like, this is how much groceries cost now. Like, looky here, like things have changed since the pandemic. So yeah, we are spending more. Um, Something I do too is just to get a little extra money. Maybe that's more on the investment question you just asked, is I typically use a credit card to pay for everything. And the credit cards I choose also are based on the benefits I get. So with my Pottery Barn credit card, they send me $25 on my birthday every year. Like, there's certain things that I max out so that I can spend, certain things and not feel guilty myself. I sometimes use my points for gift cards from Discover to go out to dinner or to buy a gift for somebody. So I'm also pretty creative in all those aspects so that we are um so that I do kind of have my own money. But again, I'm in a position where we communicate about money, but we also don't criticize like how we're spending it. And I wouldn't say but neither one of us are overspending. So I think it's just so independent of the person or the relationship, what works best. And in some cases, if you're fighting about money, I say keep separate accounts. And I have friends who are married, who are happily married, who fight about money. They fight about toothpaste, so they get two separate toothpaste. They have two separate accounts. Like, it just works for them. So I think it's just dependent.
Yeah, and I agree. One of the things that I recommend to my clients is what I call a money date night, and
Mm,
and I always recommend you do it at least once a month. You could do it more often, but at least make it once a month, where you both sit down and you look at the finances, you look at the things that you want to spend on for the coming month, and say, okay, here's how we're going to do this, and whether they have like you say, whether they have separate accounts or all use have one big joint account where all the money goes. If if you're not both on the same page and actually having these money conversations, it's so easy to get into fights over things that really don't matter. And then the next thing you know, you're talking to a divorce lawyer. And to me, seeing the statistics that say 50% of marriages end in divorce and it's around money, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
That's one of the easiest things to come up with ways of creating harmony.
Yeah.
You each have your own account. You each agree to this is what how we're going to pay joint bills like, a mortgage, the rent, the utilities, that sort of thing. And maybe have a joint account where all of those bills are paid from. And then you have your own money and you don't complain about what each of you are doing with, that bucket of own money.
Yeah. No, I think that's super smart. And again, I think because and when I got married to her, when I was dating, I was pretty, again, I was one of the last of my friends and my sisters and everybody to get married. So by then I was like, okay, what are your financial goals? Like, like I was like more like, are you gonna be like, are we gonna date or are we gonna like really talk this? And so I talked about those things pretty openly, pretty early. I did the same before kids. Like, I don't want like a dad that's not gonna be around. So we'll
Mm.
have kids if you this is something you can manage. If not, then like we're not gonna match. And so I was pretty direct, I think, about some of those things early on. I'm surprised it didn't scare them. Um, and then as a marriage too, we don't always have that date night, but I feel like monthly every time the credit card statement comes up, and I do. So if our credit card statement's way higher than it usually is, what I do respectfully is say, okay, okay, this is up because hey, we had to pay for camp this week. We had what remember this is the annual gym membership that we have to
Mm.
pay. So if anything, if I know the credit card statement has gone way higher and he's going to be questioning it, I just versus him reading the whole statement, I highlight because I already know, that we had to pay for gymnastics or something out of the ordinary that we don't pay every month came up that month, and that's
Mm.
why it's higher. Christmas time, it's Christmas. It's just going to be higher in January, right? So there's things that I outline, and so I just openly communicate about those things, and that definitely works for us.
Yeah, and like you say, it doesn't really matter how you do it or what it looks like for your situation. The key is having that communication between the two of you. You're if you're in a committed relationship, let's face it, it's a partnership, guys.
Yeah, yeah,
So let's keep those lines of communication open because there was something you liked about this person when you first got together. And money shouldn't be the thing that's now pulling you apart.
yeah. Yeah, I wish we had a class in school about this.
Yes.
It's more, I again getting married later, I think I learned from my other friends who were having these money conversations or things like that. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So I'll just avoid it by just being really direct. Um, but so I was lucky to get married later, to have all of that experience and exposure to other people who had been married and divorced and maybe on their second marriage by the time I was even pregnant with my first child. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your identity and personal power, do you act differently in your personal life versus your business life?
So So good question. I feel like I'm the same. As far as like power in general, I really feel like I'm the same. And I do that intentionally. I want to show up to work. I want to show up on this podcast. I want to show up to my family, my spouse, everybody the same way. I'm probably a little more vulnerable with my family, as they say kids are. I'm a little more, when I'm stressed, they probably see it the most. But in general, I do try to keep that pretty even. I like to have fun. I like to make jokes. I love dad jokes. I just can sit all night doing dad jokes, comedy shows. I really love humor. So part of our culture performance, even at our company, is like just you have to be comfortable just being yourself and having fun, even the most stressful moments. Let's just make it fun. I think I learned that growing up because, being poor, my mom had a lot of health conditions. So there was, she had her first heart attack when I was in high school. So it
Oh,
was like, then I'm in and she's a single mom. And so I learned, I feel like at a young age to just take things and just try to make them as light as possible, as humorous and joyous as possible. So I feel like I'm the same, or at least I hope I'm the same throughout for both of those reasons. And I think my leadership style is similar to how I talk to my kids, would be similar to how I talk to my employees. So I think it's about the same.
that's cool that you basically present the same regardless of where you are because
Right.
there's so many people that seem to have these interchangeable masks. Oh,
Mhm.
going to work, let's put on the work mask. Oh, I'm going home now, let's put on this other mask. And I don't know how you can keep all that straight.
It
I
would be very, it'd be
for
really
me it's,
stressful.
you know, it's
Yeah.
yeah, let's be the same every place, and you don't have to think about who am I supposed to be now, which to me seems kind of schizophrenic.
Yeah. A little confusing. Yeah.
And it feels like it'd be confusing to those around you too. It's like, especially those that are in more than one of your worlds, if you will,
Yeah.
to see you, oh, she acts this way here, she acts that way over there, and wonder what it's like at home. Maybe I don't want to know what it's like at home, and the you kind of lose some of that know, like, and trust thing because people start wondering what else is she hiding.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say probably, and since you bring it up that way too, it's, I think in my, I would say, is it high school, maybe high school, junior high, I didn't have a lot of, I feel like anybody who was a lot of drama or there was like a lot of like this uncertainty, I drifted away from, even as an adult. And maybe it's again that upbringing. If there's inconsistency in someone, like even kids, I'm like, oh, I can't trust you because you're being inconsistent. And so I try to be as consistent as I can as a person because that's something I just really value is being real and genuine and authentic and just being consistent for
Mm.
people, for friendships, for families, for at work, people want to know that I'm consistent. And so that's again something that I was just thinking about, like about me and how I interact with people. Yeah.
So what's next for you? What ambitions are still driving you forward?
So I love my business. I love my staff. I am so grateful for the work that we get to do with the deaf community. There's so many more things that I want to do. I really want to grow the business into working more with the deaf community, and just several other growth projects in the background for the business for sure. And then I think at some point, I do a lot of networking and I love being with people and talking with people and just meeting people and being with people in general. And I think at some point it might be more educational webinars, workshops, or just going out and speaking just a little bit more. There were so many horrible things that happened in the pandemic, and there were so many blessings I feel like that came from that. One being that I was able to see the deaf community go from this um, you know, I, I'm a little old, so deaf community before was like just show up at a place because we can't talk on the phone. Then it came to pagers, texting pagers. Now we have phones. Now we have FaceTime. There's so many more things. But what I really appreciate about the pandemic, many things, but about the deaf community was that at some point all of us had cut off communication from everybody. Like it just was so limited. And I think for a while there was some equality with that, right? We were all kind of doing the same thing, kind of all in the same kind of situation as far as communication or interacting with people. And now that the world's sort of come back, I think that the deaf community has been more empowered and like I'm showing up and this isn't accessible and this is unacceptable. And so I think that's delightful. I think it's wonderful that they're finally feeling comfortable in speaking out. So something that I want to do as I move forward is also in partnership with them and just more education around that so that it becomes more just more usual, right? If you, we have somebody, we know somebody who is in the Philippines, and there's a sign language interpreter on all of their TVs, on all of their programming, and I was in
Wow.
Amsterdam back in August, and there was an interpreter on the TV, but we don't have them here, and so
Right.
I think that my next journey will be, and hoping, helping to promote that and or make that possible, so that they're just that barrier's gone, and it's just more acceptable.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that. But you're right. There aren't interpreters on any of the TV shows here. At the least, you would think something like the news
Mhm.
would have the sense to do something like that. But I hadn't even thought about that. And of course, I don't, my hearing is just fine, so
Right.
it isn't something that crosses my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that that's how it is for a lot of people, is that you don't think about it until you're in that situation and you suddenly realize, hey, what about them?
Yeah. 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 And it's it's even in some cases, I think it's done with good intentions, but not really well performed. For example, the Super Bowl. has had interpreters the last couple of years. And then when it first was
Oh,
posted, we were so excited. And I told my husband, I was like, we have to watch the halftime show because there's gonna be interpreters there. And so we waited and we waited and there were no interpreters. Come to
oh,
find out, and I don't even know like the whole story because I could never figure it out. They had a separate link that if you wanted to see the interpreting, you had to go to a separate link on a separate site. And they had the interpreters standing in like a, you know how you like walk through like a stadium, like you walk through in a theme
right.
park? They had him
Yep.
standing in like a walkway interpreting, and I thought that is just the oddest thing I've ever seen. And I think they did the same thing last year, so I think the well intention is there, but then it actually happens, so the deaf, everyone's excited, and then it just they're in a hallway, you have to have a separate link. So it's not really fully accessible because you can't really access it. Versus a
Right.
traditional environment, if you go to a concert, the interpreter is going to be standing there in front. Um,
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize this either, getting a little technical, but grammar and sign language is on the face. So if you have an interpreter in a completely different spot and you have a performer here, I mean, they can do a pretty
Oh,
darn good job matching, but the idea is that they're connected to their performer, not the interpreter. And
right.
so yeah, so there's so much more work in that part where I would say good job, but let's maybe talk about this a little bit more. Let's maybe put a little more thought into this. Yeah. So that's where I would love to make more impact.
Okay. Yeah, I like and like you say, it again, because I'm not in that community, it never even dawned on me when you see the handful of news programs now that actually do have the interpreters, they are standing right there next to them, and I never really thought about the fact that having them next to them like that, you can see what the person is doing as well as what they're signing so that you can put those two thoughts together.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So if you had one message to give to women today about owning their independence, what would it be?
I think it comes back to kind of where I'd spoken about is, as far as owning our independence, being independent, is just being comfortable with yourself. I'm working on self-love as we speak. But I think also really just really having a good time with even if it's just you. And I feel like if that is the case, you can just really be independent. You don't necessarily need somebody for your happiness because you are that happiness, right? You are that joy that you have yourself. Um, and at the same time, if you are with people, then that's good too. It does, I will tell you too, like having a long time sometimes does hurt me a little bit because my kids live here with me, or my kids live with me, my husband live with me, and sometimes I want them to go away so I can get that quiet time. And I love them dearly, but sometimes I'm like, I just need my me time to hang out with, I need to go to dinner with myself. I've been known to sneak away for a weekend and just go to a hotel down the road, like not far, just to kind of be with myself. So I think as far as owning independence is first of all that, and then just because I've had so much self-improvement, I feel like, and so much come from the mindset work that I've done, I think that, as far as independence is, being comfortable with yourself and good with that, but also just keep working on yourself, keep working on your mindset, journal, do some meditation in the morning. Meditation to me was always sort of like, I got to sit still for 5 seconds. I don't want to do that. And then I realized it didn't have to be that way. I had mentioned Insight Timer I use, and some of those meditations they talk through. And sometimes I'll get bored and I'll drift off to sleep. So I repeat sometimes what they say. They say something, I say something, so I can stay connected to it, even if it's 2 or 3 minutes. I found just a lot of mindset improvement from that, just being able to think through stuff. So I think those are the two main things of independence. Work on yourself consistently in all manners, and then be okay with you being by yourself.
So thank you so much for joining us today, and a huge thank you to Shelly Tisius for sharing her wisdom and energy with us. If you found value in this conversation, subscribe, leave a review, and share the Empowered Money Girl with your friends. The more we spread these stories, the more women we can empower to live boldly, both financially and every part of life. Until next time, keep thriving and remember your journey to empowerment starts with you.